banks have done the right thing. They've offered people a holiday on their mortgages or a deferral. That's important. If you've just been if you've been sacked, if you've been made redundant, you've lost your job, you can't pay the mortgage. So the work that banks and building societies have done is really important in saying you don't have to pay your mortgage for the moment. If you're renting, it's a bit harder. You can't just say, I'm not going to pay the rent. And the last thing you need in a pandemic is for people to get kicked out on the street. It's not good for the renter, not good for the landlord, and not good for the country. We've got to keep people in their homes to protect them. That's why I called for a freeze on evictions last month. The PM backed that, and the states have now put in place laws to make sure that happens. We've just got to watch now over the next few weeks to make sure that's implemented properly. And the key in all of this is making sure that landlords and tenants sit down and work this out. There are incentives that have been built into it in different models that states have put forward. In some states, for example, if you cut the rent for the tenant, you'll get a cut in your land tax bill. In other places in the ACT, they've said if you cut the rent for the tenant, then we'll cut the rates. Now, those sorts of incentives help to encourage landlords and tenants to sit down and find a way through to make sure that people don't get kicked out of their home now, landlords don't end up out of pocket. And also, you don't have tenants with a massive bill that they're going to have to pay in a couple of months' time. Yeah,
well, and that's the thing, though, because unless there are real incentives for the landlord, they end up picking up the bill. Now, maybe in some situations they're in the best position to, maybe in situations where they're retired and that's their only income, they're really not. So your call seems to be based around all the relief from state governments then. It's up to them to come to the party on relief for landlords?
We've got to look after tenants and landlords. It's an ecosystem here. We've got to look after both. And, so to give you an example here in New South Wales. So they've said, if you cut the rent, we'll give you a cut in land tax. Now, that's a good thing, but the problem here in New South Wales is that not many landlords pay land tax. Only about 16% of landlords pay land tax. That means there's very little incentive for landlords here in New South Wales to actually cut your rent. In other states, it's very different. Most landlords do pay land tax, so there's a better chance that they're going to sit down and say, I'll cut the rent, government cut my tax. So, I guess what I'm saying is that the different state governments need to look at the legislation they're putting in place and see how it works. And the ultimate test is, are landlords and tenants working out a solution here that helps to make sure that people stay in their homes, that people are still able to pay the rent, and that we don't have landlords massively out of pocket at the end of this and tenants with big bills.
This is the part of the situation that's just probably beginning housing. So we'll keep an eye on that and keep talking to you through the crisis, Jason Clare. Just wanted to ask as well, because you've spoken about a big downturn in housing. We could see prices come way off. We could see that impact construction as well, obviously. Is now not the time to be talking about any sort of changes around negative gearing?
Well, think about this. You've got people at the moment who might have been talking about building a new house or buying their first house for the last few months. Then coronavirus hits, you lose your job, or you watch the TV, you see the pandemic hitting the whole world, confidence is down, you're less likely to buy a house. And that's exactly what's happening now. The housing industry says people aren't signing contracts. The impact of that is that fewer houses are going to be built this year than was originally predicted. Originally, the industry thought about 160,000 homes would be built this year. Now it could be as low as 100. That means a lot of tradies could lose their jobs. And this is an industry that employs about 1 million people. Everything from carpenters and bricklayers and plumbers and electricians through to the companies that produce the cement, the timber, the plasterboard, the bricks, etc. So what I've said, what Albo and the Labor Party have said, is that the National Cabinet, the Prime Minister and the Premiers need to sit down and develop a plan here to make sure that we don't have hundreds of thousands of tradies losing their jobs over the next few months. The last thing we need as Australia hopefully goes back to work over the next few months is a lot of tradies out of work because there's no homes to build. We won't have snapback if that happens. The PM talks about snapback. The economy's not going to snap back if you've got all of those mum and dad businesses, those small family businesses involved in building homes that snap in the next few months.
So, yeah, fair enough. And when you talk about, though, as well, the impact on landlords, and how slow moving this could be in terms of the economic impact. Does that mean any changes around negative gearing, given how big a relief that is for some people? They're facing a loss of rent and they go, oh, well, I can write that off. That any changes to that, because you've spoken about, keeping some sort of policy on this, that might have to be on the back burner for a while?
Oh, we've said that all of the policies we took to the last election, we'll go back and review those on a blank canvas. And at the moment, in the middle of a crisis, I think, our focus is not on what policies we'll take to the next election. Our focus is what are the policies that we need that are going to keep Aussies working and keep people safe. Now, the JobKeeper package is a good one. We backed that. We actually called for it. But keep in mind, Tommy, that runs from March till September. Now, in September, when all of those wage subsidies stop, we're going to have a lot of tradies out of work because the pipeline of construction activity in the housing industry is drying up. If you don't sign a contract today, then there won't be concrete being poured on a slab somewhere in Western Sydney in August or September or October. So this is coming at us. And what I'm saying is it's up to government now to think about this problem that's coming at us in a couple of months' time and make sure that we don't end up with a lot of tradies unemployed at the same time that Australia is going back to work.